Ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 o'clock, it's Scotland, and it's Saturday, and that can only mean one thing. It's a force for goods, Saturday street stall, broadcasting to you live from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow. Thank you for the people who are just joining us on Facebook. We're broadcasting to you live on this camera on Facebook and on this camera on Twitter. And we're broadcasting from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow, because we cannot be out on the streets as we would on a lovely day like today with our red, white and blue street stall. We can't do that at this time, but what we can do through the wonders of modern technology is we can bring you our message. We can bring you your weekly serving up of staunch unionist philosophy and policy. And we can answer your questions as well. And if you've got any questions, fire them in. If you have any questions on Twitter, fire them in. We love to hear from you. If you've got any suggestions about what we can be doing for the cause at this strange time, then please fire those suggestions in as well, because we want to hear from you. On Facebook and on Twitter, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from our friends, and we'll also be taking questions from people who disagree with us, providing that they're polite questions. Okay, Twitter crew, please remember, we see your questions, but we don't always answer them if they're not respectful. You know what I'm saying? Good. I'm your host, Alistair McConaughey, and this is A Force for Goods, Saturday Street Stall. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, guess what? The coronavirus is obsessing all of us to a point really that's very unusual. I was in the park yesterday, not too far from where not too far here from our office, and there were a couple of police officers going around. They were a bit embarrassed, to be frank with you. They were a bit embarrassed when they come up to me and they asked me, as they were asking everybody, even people sitting on their own, to move on if you don't mind. So apparently sitting in the park bench, I don't know why you had to move on from that, but they were asking us to move on. And no doubt this experience is replicated throughout the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. Even though up here we have essentially like a one-party state which runs things, and this was really brought home to us this week, and this is something that I want to just mention to you. You know, the phrase that they've got, stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. Well, the British government has done that, but the Scottish administration has put its own spin on that, and it has these graphics which it's using through all its administrative departments, for example, Traffic Scotland. And it's essentially the same message, stay home, but it's protect NHS Scotland, save lives. But here's the thing, it's done in the same font as the SNP font, and it's done in the same colour, which is the yellow colour. Now, you won't be able to see this on, this is just a black and white printout, and the words will be reversed on Facebook, but not on Twitter. Stay home, protect NHS Scotland, because they've always got to get the word Scotland in there, right? Save lives. And that's actually the SNP font, and that would be a yellow backing. Now, imagine that. Imagine if the Tories did that, for example, that they started putting out the messages in Tory font, in Tory colours. You would think it was a one-party state, and you would be correct if they did that. But here in Scotland, the official message from Holyrood is being beamed out with SNP messaging subliminally attached. And we know this for a fact because somebody wrote to, this is Traffic Scotland, okay? You've got to add Scotland onto the word traffic. You've got to add Scotland onto everything, actually. Like Jacket Scotland, T-shirt Scotland, you know, mobile device Scotland. You've also, you know, it's the law up here. You've got to add Scotland on to every word. I'm going to the supermarket Scotland. I'm going to post a letter Scotland. I'm going to buy a pint of milk Scotland. I'm going to buy a stamp Scotland. I'm going to cross the street Scotland. I'm going to catch the bus Scotland. I'm going to sit on the seat Scotland. I'm going to get a ticket Scotland. You know, and then suddenly people are like, what's the name of this country again? Is it Scotland? I can't remember. Not clear on that. Anyway, where was it? Yes, Traffic Scotland. Somebody wrote to them and goes, since when did Traffic Scotland become a branch of the SNP? Well, actually, that happened a long time ago. That happened when, in 2007, when the SNP took control of Holyrood. Everything became a branch of the SNP. That's the reality that we're living in today here in Scotland. It is a one-party state, essentially, you know. At least that's how the people in charge at Holyrood act. So since when did Traffic Scotland become a branch of the SNP? This is this fellow writing to Traffic Scotland on Twitter. For example, SNP font, SNP colours, SNP message. And Traffic Scotland actually got back to the person and goes, hi, the graphic was supplied to us from the, they call it government, but it's like the SNP, to use for COVID-19 advice. So in other words, we have proof here that the SNP is messaging in all its graphics. It's using the COVID message written in SNP font in SNP colours, and that's being beamed out through all its administrative agencies, such as Traffic Scotland, such as Bin Collection Scotland, such as Road Scotland, and all the other things that are devolved. And last week I asked the question, why do we have all this devolved anyway, considering that emergency powers are reserved? But as somebody pointed out to me as a consequence of that, emergency powers are reserved for Westminster, but health is devolved. And so what the SNP can do is it can use that as the excuse to basically get into the whole emergency legislation field without appearing to actually be doing that. And it's the same, for example, with energy. Energy is reserved, so you think, well, why does the Scottish Parliament have so much power over such matters? Well, planning is devolved. So if you want to build a coal mine, for example, in Scotland, you can't do it because you can't get the planning to do it, even though the energy is something that's reserved. So, in other words, the so-called devolution settlement, which I spoke about last week, whereby everything is considered to be devolved unless it is written down as reserved, that is what enables a Scottish nationalist government to continue to expand like a gas into all nooks and crannies and all areas. The correct way that devolution should have been done is that everything should have been considered to be reserved unless it was specifically written down as devolved. That's the correct way to do devolution. Obviously, that was not what was done, because that was the correct thing to have done, but that was not done. What was done instead was everything was said to be devolved, except that which we remember to write down. So that means even things that we don't know about yet are essentially devolved already, even though we don't know about them yet. Things that haven't been invented are already considered to be devolved because they have not been written down as reserved. So that settlement is all wrong, and devolution settlement, it can be how it can be corrected again. So that's the ridiculous thing that's going about now is the SNP is now branding its COVID messages with its SNP colours and its SNP font. And I would like to think that we could have somebody at Holyrood who would complain about that. Somebody's writing, for various reasons, the Conservatives, Labour and Lib Democrats at Holyrood have been almost as useless as a chocolate teapot from a pro-British point of view since 2007. So true. So true. Another fellow there. Can I ask, Alistair, is the SNP a cult? That's a good question, actually. Towards their leadership. Venerating the leader. To the point where, you know, they'll put a face on teacups and tea towels and badges and so on. So that's some of its members, not all of its members or supporters, but a lot of them really do appear to. So, thanks for everybody who's tuning in, by the way. We're broadcasting on this camera on Facebook, and we're broadcasting on this camera on Twitter. And if you can retweet, there's somebody contacting me here. Yes, good. It's working on Periscope and on Twitter. So if you can retweet this, please do so with a comment. Click the retweet button and it will say retweet with a comment. If you put in a positive comment, what that means is we can then retweet that tweet. Okay, so we can then retweet your tweet to almost 25,000 people now. Almost 25,000 people. Somebody's saying already have. Good stuff. Good stuff. Somebody agreeing that they are a cult, not a very bright cult, but a cult nevertheless. Well, you could be right. You could be right. Absolutely, absolutely. Many of them do manifest those strange cultish behaviours. And for many, it's almost like a replacement religion. And we've touched on this before, in that it provides for some people an entire meaning to their lives in a way that they can't find in any other way, shape or form. And they see the concept of independence as almost like a kind of heaven on earth, when everything is going to be fine and where man will sin no more. And you see it in their approach to even themselves and other human beings. It's like, look at Westminster, it's corrupt. If we had our glorious independence, there would be no corruption. Well, of course, there would just be the same human problems that there are in every political system, because we are human beings. Independence will not bring in a new state of man. We will still be fallen, to use that language. So it's not going to be this great heaven on earth as they imagine. Holyrood would still have its problems. People would still be getting into trouble. Some politicians would still be doing naughty things, just as they do it in every parliament in the world, and they will continue to forevermore. That's just the nature. That's just the nature of human beings. It's not going to be solved by separation. We have this phrase, separation won't solve it. And that's so true. Separation won't solve it. Okay, it's not a miraculous healer. It's not going to make all wrongs right. It's just going to probably make a lot of things worse as well. Well, there's somebody saying, I hope we could fight together as the British Isles is a small island. I hope you're absolutely correct, and I hope that we do stand up and do all of these things and fight all of these things together. But we have to remember that there are people in our midst who don't want us to do that. They want to compromise the relationship. I mean, the SNP like the idea of falling out with England. They like it when people in England get upset with the Scots, because the SNP like that. They like that conflict. They like that division because they know it will ultimately help them. They're aiming to sicken enough people against Scotland Okay, the SNP has as a strategy to sicken the rest of the United Kingdom against Scotland. That's part of their strategy. It has to be part of their strategy, because they know that if we come together, if we do more things together, then our social and cultural union will come together, and consequently our political union will help to be healed as well. So the SNP have no interest. They will, as somebody just said, they deliberately cause divide. And these, within a small country like the United Kingdom, a specific nationalism in any one place can be really, really destructive, because it's kind of unrealistic. You know, it's obviously going to set neighbour against neighbour within the context of the small island that we live in, the small islands that we live in. And we have this phrase, you know, that's one of the great things about being British, is that, as we say, it's one of the best nations within which to, one of the best identities within which to accommodate diverse identities. So here in Scotland, for example, if you want to be as Scottish as you want, you can be. Nobody's stopping you. If you want to be as British as you want, you can do that as well. But imagine if we had so-called independence, if we had separation. Would people who want to be British be allowed to be British? Were people allowed to be British when the Republic of Ireland broke away? Were people in the Republic of Ireland still allowed to be British? I think history shows us where that one went. I mean, you kept your head down, you shut up, you moved north, or you got shot. That was basically what happened back in those days. God forbid that would ever happen here. But the history of our islands does teach us that if you have a militant nationalism in one part of it, it will seek to dominate entirely, and it will seek to drive out any people who do not get with the programme. Whereas within Britain, within the British identity, we have an ability to accommodate diverse identities like that. If you want to be a Republican in Scotland, you can be, you know. Nobody's stopping you, fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. Just allow us to be royalists. You see, we allowed them to be Republicans, but they wouldn't allow us to be royalists if they got their way, which is what we must ensure that they never do. Now, and of course they won't. They won't, because we are in the right. We are in the right, and we have all the best arguments on our side. Absolutely, absolutely. Our shared union and our shared British identities. One of the great things about the union is our British identity. It allows the British identity to flourish. And, you know, it allows Scots, people from Scotland, to have an impact on the rest of the United Kingdom, and it allows people in the rest of the UK to have an impact upon Scotland. And over the years, many things that we think about as the Scottish identity have been in some ways created by people from the rest of our islands. For example, if you think of an iconic Scottish monument, you'll think of Robert the Bruce statue at Bannockburn, the one that appears on the banknotes. Well, that was sculpted by an Englishman, okay? If you think his name was Charles Pilkington Jackson. If you think of an iconic Scottish song, for example, the Sky Boat song, Over the Sea to Sky, that was written by an Englishman, Sir Harold Edwin. Sir Harold Edwin wrote the Sky Boat song. If you think of an iconic Scottish painting, for example, Monarch of the Glen, the big stag, well, that was the Englishman Sir Edwin Landseer who did that. So our union has created those cultural interactions where people from England have benefited us here in Scotland, and people from Scotland have benefited people from England, and in Northern Ireland, and in Wales, and back and forward. We have created over time a social and cultural union, as often as a consequence of the political union as well. Talking of which, this week, Friday the 1st of May, is the anniversary of the Parliamentary Union in 1707. 1st of May 1707 was when the Scottish and English parliaments came together. I've got a question here which I cannot see, but if the person could send that to us on Facebook Messenger, and I'll have a look at that question, please. Yeah, so there's somebody saying we have a generous, unionism is generous and separatism is narrow. Somebody else saying the SNP have always slated me when I said that if William Wallace were alive now, he would not tolerate the SNP party and their agenda. He wouldn't allow the SNP to break away. Absolutely. I entirely agree that not only would William Wallace believe that, but Mel Gibson would also believe that. Somebody saying, yes, on Twitter here, the question which I'm just going to read is, devolution was introduced with the connivance of so-called unionist parties. Isn't it time that the UK and Scotland in particular had a unionist political party? Well, I don't want to get into talking party politics on those particular matters, whether a party specifically dedicated to the union and nothing else, whether that would have traction in modern Scotland. There would certainly be a lot of people who would vote for such a thing. Whether there's a niche for that, I don't want to get into. Maybe we'll find out at next year's Holyrood elections, where it is so important that we ensure that the SNP does not get another term, and it is not able to join with the Green Cabbage Party in order to amass enough vegetables to sit at Holyrood. It's very important that we keep the SNP and the Scottish Cabbage Party, otherwise known as the Soggy Greens, keep them out of Holyrood, because they are both separatist parties. People think the Soggy Greens are, as we've said before, all about saving the whales. The Soggy Greens couldn't care less about the whales or about anything. It's like, when was the last time you saw an MSP, a green cabbage MSP, even picking up litter, for crying out loud? Picking up litter, you know. Scotland, just I suppose like many parts of the United Kingdom, has got a lot of litter, especially here in Glasgow, you know. I don't see the Greens doing anything about that. I don't see them doing anything about it. You know, they don't stand up and say, you know, pick up your litter, stop throwing it away, keep Britain tidy, even keep Scotland tidy. They don't even do anything like that. You know, like environmentally conscious, they're not. But they're conscious about everything else that doesn't even concern them, you know. And the Soggy Greens especially are really militant Republicans, even more militant than the SNP. So if you vote Green, you are essentially voting for Republican separatists who don't care about the environment at all, okay? And to the extent that they care about it, they'll just make up like nonsense about the world's going to end. Again, apocalypticism, a kind of secular apocalypticism, that the world's going to end if we don't stop driving cars or pumping out ozone or whatever the thing is these days. So don't vote for the Soggy Greens. If you can take that away from this broadcast, that's important, because they are basically totally in bed with the SNP. maybe quite literally half the time. Who knows what goes on over there? So yeah, coronavirus, street stalls. Okay, we cannot be in our street stall today. This guy's a complete rocket. Thank you. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Certainly on fire today. We are on fire today. Yeah, so we are standing out on the street. Imagine we were standing out in the street. What sort of things do people come up and ask us? Well, I should say first away, most people who come up to us are 100% supportive. I mean, they'll come up and they'll go, so good to see the Union flag flying, so good to see it. A lot of people will say, where have you been? Where have you been all these years? And I mean, really, really positive stuff. Really positive stuff. Tell you a wee story, actually. Myself and 4 colleagues were in town. This was about a month ago, and it was a sad occasion because we had to go to a funeral. But the 4 of us were wearing our AFFG flags because we were the contingent for my good friend Alan, who passed away, who's one of our directors here. And we're just standing waiting for a taxi, and this random bloke, right, just comes up to us, and he goes, so nice to see the Union flag in Glasgow. And he points at the wee badges that we were wearing. So this guy had seen these badges from goodness knows where, had come over and actually thanked us for wearing the badge. Just a wee badge, you know. That's the hunger that's there, the hunger that's out there for Britishness and for the symbols of Britishness. And that's why one of our key aims, we have 6 aims, one of our key aims is to turn Scotland red, white and blue, as we say. Turn Scotland red, white and blue, by which we mean increasing the visibility of British symbolism here in Scotland. And if you like a wee badge, you can get it from our shop, which you can find on our website at aforceforgood.uk. And we're selling the wee badge there if you like it. And we've got a new print run of these, a new runs coming in. They're going to be slightly bigger. And we've also got a new, we've got one with a red background as well, like this flag here. We've got one of them that's being produced as well. So it's all go here. Somebody's saying lots of litter in Dundee too. Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the thing that we can do. It's like when you see SNP stickers or nationalist stickers on a lamppost, you think to yourself, oh, somebody should remove that. Who's going to remove that? Okay, nobody's going to phone the council and say there's a sticker on a lamppost, could you come and remove it? And if you did, they would never do it. And if they did, they'd maybe do it in 2 years' time or something like that. If you see a sticker that you don't like on a lamppost, you take it down. Nobody else is taking it down except you. Similarly, if and we do that all the time. Like whenever we're out, just peel off that. I don't need to see that. That's SNP propaganda. That's coming down. Just take it down. You know, set the example. We always say to people, that's something you can do. People say, what can I do to help the union? Take down SNP stickers that are on lampposts. I mean, there's some parts of Scotland where, like, there's been SNP propaganda hanging from bridges since like 1977, you know, and nobody in the area has got the wit to take a pair of scissors and cut it down. I mean, it's just like, so many people are so passive. Oh, goodness me. So passive. If you don't like it, cut it down. If you see litter in the park, pick it up. Because the guy in the park, like, he just drives about in a van and his job is to empty the bins. You know, he doesn't walk about picking up the litter. It's for you to pick up the litter if you see it. So all you have to do, get a glove, some gloves from Asda, and take a plastic bag in and pick up the litter. You know, you'll be doing more for the country than any Green MSP has ever done or ever will do by that simple act. And I know I've also got another friend who does that as well. Keep the country clean. Keep the country clean. I am persistent, I keep the country clean. I'm trying to think of that song, Electric Eye, heavy metal song. Anyway, where are we? Yeah, so we're on the street stall. People will come up to us and they'll go, Scotland gets what England wants. That's if somebody thinks that they've got an idea that we're wrong. They'll say, but Scotland always gets what England wants at Westminster. Now, what do they mean by that? Well, here's what they mean. There are 650 MPs at Westminster. There are 530 from England. There are 59 from Scotland, 40 from Wales, and 18 from Northern Ireland. So, on the face of it, England could outvote the rest of the UK by 4.5 times if it wanted to. It could do that. It could get its way like that. But here's the thing. That has never happened, and it never will happen, because that's not the way that Westminster works. The way it works is that the Parliament is divided on party lines and ideological lines. It is not divided on national lines. England doesn't vote against Scotland, doesn't vote against Northern Ireland, which doesn't vote against Wales. It's the British Parliament, and it's divided only on party and ideological lines. And sometimes parties themselves are divided against each other on ideological lines. And sometimes, as we've seen recently, people will split away from parties. So the idea that England always gets its way is not correct, because England never votes as England, just as Scotland never votes as Scotland per se. The Parliament works on party and ideological lines, and everybody votes at the end of the day for what is considered to be the best interests of the United Kingdom, unless, of course, you are one of the separatist crew who simply only ever vote for what they perceive as their country's interests, such as the Welsh nationalists or the Scottish nationalists, or the Sinn Féiners who don't even attend Westminster. So that's how we would respond. We say that's not how Parliament works. England doesn't get its way because England doesn't vote as England in the British Parliament. The Parliament is divided not on the basis of nations, but on the basis of party and ideological difference. And why that mistake is regularly made by such people is because the Scottish nationalists really do believe that the SNP is Scotland. So if they see the SNP being outvoted, they think it is Scotland being outvoted. Well, it's not Scotland being outvoted, it's the SNP. It's a political party being outvoted. There are other MPs in other parties from Scotland, and sometimes they also will be outvoted, or they may get their way. And sometimes the SNP also is part of a winning coalition of votes, and it gets its way then. But they never make a thing about that. When they get their way, they don't make a thing about it, but when they get voted against, then they make a thing about it. So the Scottish nationalist confusion arises because they genuinely do believe that the SNP is Scotland, when it's not Scotland. It's simply a political party. So the reality is Scotland never gets outvoted because no countries get outvoted. It is political parties and ideological tendencies which get outvoted. And that's a key way of understanding the British Parliament correctly. And if you don't see that, then you will misinterpret what it's all about. And you will wonder, well, why? You will, if you imagine the SNP is Scotland, obviously you're going to be quite confused anyway. But we do our best here in order to lessen the confusion. We know that Scottish nationalists are easily confused, so we do our best to educate them essentially, and to help them understand the nature of reality within which they live and have their being. And that's a tough call, that's a big ask, quite frankly, for many. But we're up to the task. We're up to the task because A Force for Good is Scotland's premier pro-UK campaigning and advocacy organisation. And we were established in March 2012. We've just had our 8th birthday. And we're going to be here for another 8 years. And we're going to be here for as long as it takes, because this is our mission. And we have a great team behind us. And I am so grateful to the people who help us on Facebook, who help us on Twitter, who do our Instagram page, which is the biggest pro-UK Instagram page in the world. We have a fantastic Instagram curator who does that. Thank you so much to that person. Thank you so much to the Facebook team. You know who you are. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to the people who help to do our graphic design, who help to put together our magazines and our publications. Thank you to the people who help to do filming, who help to edit videos like these. And thanks to the people who do our podcast. This will be, the audio from this afterwards will be ripped from it, and we will put it up on, our podcast page on our website, which is aforceforgood.uk/podcast. And it will also be uploaded onto Spotify. It will also be uploaded onto Spreaker, Podchaser, and Deezer. So please, if you're into podcasts, and some people prefer to listen rather than to watch, you can download everything on our Saturday street stall. You can download it every week. The podcast will be up there by tomorrow evening, if not this evening, and it will be ready to go. And the audio is surprisingly good. Really pleased with our podcast and our podcast project, which we are now developing on, ensuring that everything we say is captured for posterity. Now, a question came in there on Twitter, which I'm just going to have a look at. Question: do you think Boris will shut down Holyrood and reverse devolution if Sturgeon continues to push for another referendum? No, he's not going to shut down Holyrood. Many of us, there's many people certainly out there who would like him to do that, and many people would not complain if he did that, and there are a lot of people who would like that to happen. But is that politically feasible? I don't see how that's politically feasible. What he should do, though, there's plenty of things that he can do in order to make it, to lessen the power of Scottish nationalists by bringing Britain closer together, economically and politically. There's plenty of things that he could do. And we send our ideas to the government on a regular basis, and we have somebody who's dedicated to doing that, and I know that person is watching, and I want to thank that person for the work that they do, our political outreach to our MPs and also to our MSPs. Somebody's saying there that Holyrood is a massive waste of money and has been from the start. Well, I agree with you. And as we said last week, all it does is it ensures that things get done either in a more confused manner or at a slower manner and always at a less effective manner. You know, prior to devolution in 1999, we had simply a Secretary of State, and as I always say, his job, somebody said to him, like, we need to build 5 new towns in Scotland, and he goes, you know, he'd look at the paper and he'd go, well, just cost it up and do it, you know. And civil society, as we call them, just got it done, you know. planners, architects, builders. This is a mission. You've got to build East Kilbride. You've got to build these other new towns, Irvine. There was 5 of them, I believe, and they all just sprung up like entire towns. Imagine you tried to get Holyrood today to build a house, one house, okay? How long it would take the MSPs to build one house, right? 10 years from now, we'd still be like figuring out the plumbing, or forget to put the heating in, or, you know, they'd forget that there was Livingston, that's another new town as well. Forget to put the windows in or something like that. You know, you couldn't trust Holyrood to build one house today. But prior to devolution, Westminster essentially are the Secretary of State for Scotland, the Scottish office. The Scottish office was just like the British government in Scotland. That's what it is still today. And it was a big, powerful civil organisation, the Scottish office, and it created everything that we enjoy today. Everything. The houses that most of the houses that we live in were built before devolution. The roads, the motorways, the dams. We always talk about the Cruachan Dam at Loch Awe, where they actually built a generator inside a mountain. Okay, inside a mountain. Imagine doing that. Imagine trying to say that even to, I don't know who's in charge of building generators these days. Generator Scotland, shall we say. Go to Generator Scotland, say, we'd like to build a generator, but it's going to be inside a mountain. Okay, can you handle that? They'd say, well, we need to speak to Mountain Scotland to see if there's any mountains. And then the mountain guys would say, I'm afraid not, because we've spoken to Environment Scotland, and they say that there's a kind of heather here that needs to be protected because it's the last Scottish heather in the world, so we can't build inside this mountain lest we upset the heather balance. And so then they'll go to that would be the end of it, basically. That would be the end of it. You can't build inside the mountain anymore, which is just as well, because imagine the absolute mess that Holyrood would make of that. Imagine it. I mean, they just couldn't do it. They could not do it, okay? But back in those days, that was the 60s. Just, yeah, bang, generator inside a mountain, easiest thing in the world, mate. No problem. I'll just get the lads with the shovels, we'll dig a big hole, stick it in there. So things got done better and faster and more reliably and more longer lasting prior to devolution. And all that devolution really did was it just created a whole lot of jobs for the public sector in Scotland. And goodness knows Scotland loves its public sector employees. So it gave more jobs for those guys, and it just was a waste of money, complete waste of money. And we don't need it, but we've got to the stage now where how do you get rid of it? How do you get rid of it? That's the thing. And so Boris is not, to get back to your question, Boris is not going to shut it down, but what he can do is there's plenty of things that he could do to make things better. And in our latest issue of Union Heart, and it's just been brought to my attention there, 12 ways to strengthen the British Union. And this has been sent to Boris and other people. The lettering will be in reverse order if you're watching on Facebook. That's just the way Facebook works. But so 12 ways, basically 12 ways that he can strengthen the Union without having to shut down Holyrood, if that is considered politically unfeasible. Here's ways that he can actually strengthen the Union. And we publish that in our quarterly magazine. It's called Union Heart. It's free to anybody who is a Union supporter, by which we mean somebody who donates to us monthly. So if you donate to us monthly, you'll get our magazine free of charge sent to you. And you can also pick it up on our street stall for free when we're actually out on the street. And to become a Union supporter, go to aforceforgood.uk/union-supporters. Another question there on Twitter. Do you think the Chinese virus has killed off any threat of another referendum? Surely people see how lucky we are to be in the United Kingdom. Has it killed off the threat? Well, it may have. The thing is, though, that the Scottish nationalists, the hardcore 20% of Scottish nationalists, don't care one way or the other about that, and they will be unfazed by it, and they will just continue to do it. Has it sufficiently got through to that number of people that we need to convince onto our side? I would like to think so. Goodness me, it certainly does show the benefit of at least having a big, a big economy behind you, which can bail you out, like what happened back in 2008 when the Scottish banks were bailed out by the wider British taxpayer. And what we're looking at here today is the power of the British economy to back Scotland. We just have to hope that this shutdown doesn't go on to such an extent that there's no economy left anywhere in this country or in the world. But we're hopefully not there yet. But provided we can get out of this fairly quickly, then the might of the British Treasury will be shown, and it should sufficiently get through to a certain number of people. But it won't get through to the hardcore Nats, because they'll just say, well, that's money that was owed us anyway. That's how they respond, you see. You say, look, you've just got £500 billion here from Westminster. But we were owed that anyway. And you're just like, what? You know? So that's not just people saying that. That's what their MSPs and MPs say. Oh, it's just owed to us anyway, you know. So there's no getting through to that constituency. But the more thoughtful person can obviously see that this is an example, just like the banking crisis, that you do need a big economy behind you. Whether you're in Scotland or England, Wales or Northern Ireland, the British economy is still one of the most powerful in the world, and can back us up. And I'm not saying by that we're always being subsidised by England, as the Scottish nationalists like to say. That might be the case sometimes. Sometimes it works the other way. Sometimes there'll be money going from Scotland to England, and that's quite right. That's the way it's meant to work. It's a union. It's a union. So we are happy here in Scotland to help our brothers and sisters in the rest of the United Kingdom, and they're happy to help us. That's the way a union works. It's like a big family, an extended family. We don't put one part of the family before another part. We don't say you're more deserving than this part of the family. It's not appropriate to put one part before another part when you're related, as we are in our nation of families. As we said last week, we're not so much a family of nations, we're a nation of families, quite literally a nation of families. That's been coming together now for millennia. When Britain first at heaven's command arose from out the azure main, this was the charter of the land, and guardianing angels sang this strain. Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves, Britons never, never, never shall be slaves. So we trace it right back to when Britain first arose from out the azure main. When we first came out of the sea, we've been on a journey through time towards unity. Social, cultural, legal, political, economic. And do you know who wrote that song? James Thomson, who was a Scotsman from South Scotland. And he wrote that song. He was a real strong British unionist and patriot. And I think that's fantastic. He's got a memorial as well in Ednam, Ednam, which is a small village in the south of Scotland. Another question there's come in. Do you think the Conservative Party will keep the Edinburgh Central seat at the 2021 Scottish Parliament elections? Well, I have to hope that they do, because the SNP person who's going to be standing is either going to be Angus Robertson or Joanne Cherry. Now, people will say, oh, Nicola Sturgeon, I wish she'd stepped down. I don't like her. You don't like Nicola Sturgeon? Wait till somebody like Joanne Cherry or Angus Robertson get elected. And if they become leaders of the SNP, oh my goodness, you haven't seen anything yet, because these are really strong, separatist, Republican, anti-British people. Oh my goodness me. And they really are nasty in their politics towards people like ourselves. So everybody has to unite in that constituency in Edinburgh Central to keep either Joanna Cherry or Angus Robertson, to keep them out, because they must not get elected. Because one of them will then be the next leader of the SNP. No question about that. One of them, if they get elected there, they'll then be up for the next leader of the SNP. And you ain't seen nothing yet. If you don't like Sturgeon, wait until Cherry or Robertson take the seat. So let us hope that the SNP do not regain that seat. So where were we? I'm just going to end just before 2 o'clock, and I'm going to mention that this week coming up, 1st of May, on Friday, is the anniversary of the 1707 Parliamentary Union. Now, the 1st of May has often been thought of as Trades Union Day. You know, it was instituted as a bank holiday post-war, I think it was. So it became a sort of trade union day. But as we unionists became more conscious, we realised that it's also British Union Day. And it should therefore be celebrated as such. And so we at A Force for Good have been trying to encourage people to acknowledge that, to understand the day exists in the first place, to remember the date, and to make sure that that we do something to celebrate it in our own way. So that's coming up on Friday. We'll certainly be making posts about that online, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook, and on our website. For those of you who would like to know more about the Treaty of Union, on our legacy site, aforceforgood.org.uk, back in 2015 and in 2016, we had 12 articles on there, which are in 2 series, one of which is entitled Scottish Desire for Union 1707, No Parcel of Rogues. And what that does is it puts to bed the notion that somehow the parliamentarians at the time were, you know, inveigled and bribed, as they say, into signing it. Complete nonsense, complete nonsense. It's just another stinking lie from the Scottish nationalists, who lie about everything when they don't get their way. This is a technique of many of them. They just lie. I've never seen that until I started getting into this field, the extent to which they have lied, not just today, but right through the centuries. They just lie about things, and they lie about people when they don't get their way. And they do it shamelessly. Shamelessly. So, it's a lie, and to the extent that there's any truth in it, we show just what that truth is. Much of the money, which wasn't as much as they tend to exaggerate, was owed to many of the parliamentarians anyway. But it's all there, Scottish Desire for Union 1707. If you go to aforceforgood.org.uk/history/Treaty 1, and you'll see all the articles on the Union. And this is the Treaty of Union here, and we'll just end with this. This is what we signed up to, that the 2 kingdoms of Scotland and England shall, upon the 1st day of May, and forever after, be united into one kingdom by the name Great Britain. Fantastic. And then part 3, that the United Kingdom of Great Britain be represented by one and the same Parliament, to be styled the Parliament of Great Britain. And that was really when we as a nation really took off, especially here in Scotland. A huge, well, there was a rocky ride, of course, for the first 40 or 50 years, and we had the Jacobites and so on. But after that, we just took off for the stars, and we're still heading there. We're still heading upwards, because as we say, the Union stretches back millennia, but in many ways, it's really just begun. It's really just begun, and the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. In days of yore, from Scotland's shore, James VI, our dauntless hero, came and planted first the Union flag on Britain's fair domain. Because we always like to emphasise that this flag had actually been going since prior to the 1707 Union. It was actually formed as a consequence of James VI of Scotland becoming King of Great Britain, and he put this flag together in 1604, a year after he had taken the reins of essentially uniting the regal realms. And then a century or so later, along came the Parliamentary Union. So these are all dates that we remember regularly on our platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, educating about our great history, educating about the Union, educating about the United Kingdom, about what is gone and what can yet be. Because the future is built upon the past, you know, and understanding the past and respecting it and seeing its place is crucial to our whole message. So let me just say, if you can share this on Facebook, please do so, and if you can retweet it, please retweet it with a comment, and we will then retweet you to 25,000 people. And that's a lot of people, and I want to say a big thank you to our person who helps on Twitter, who has really been getting the great content up there, good graphics, and great follower ratio. Lots of people following us now, and it's only going to get better. We're almost going to be at 25,000. Let's see if we can hit that as soon as possible, and then the next step is 50,000, and we will get there because we have the content and we have the philosophy, and we've got this fantastic policies as well that we keep pushing out. And then that kind of differentiates us, because we're not just moaning about stuff, we're actually laying down the philosophy, and we are creating policy ideas for politicians to use, or to use to influence in whatever way they can. We don't care who takes our ideas, just take them and please make them work. So that's what it's coming up for 2 o'clock, so I'm just going to say thank you very much for watching. Do we have any other questions there? The SNP has deliberately caused divide, much like Plaid Cymru in Wales, that's for sure. Somebody else saying, thanks for doing this. Yeah, you're more than welcome. And if we cannot do this, though, without all of you who support us. And these lives really are great to keep our message out there, to keep the message of our fantastic United Kingdom. Here may it wave, our boast, our pride, and joined in love together, the thistle, shamrock, rose entwine, the Union Jack forever. Folks, have a great day. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. Check out our work, and thank you for watching. Good stuff. Take care, folks.